Unity needs to save your data when you hit play, stop the game, or close the editor. To do that, it uses a system called serialization, basically turning your variables into a format Unity can store and restore. But here's the catch. Unity only serializes certain types of variables, and that's where things like serializeField comes in. So over here, I've got an audio service. We like to use real world examples, not just empty scenes, because this is actually production ready scripts. So we're just going to hit play and we're just going to see that, yep, cool, audio service is a thing. It does what it needs to. It gets some camera component. So the audio service, primarily, we're just going to look at the main camera or this camera component in the inspector, because we actually want to see how is it that you can expose this and what are some very good ways to actually utilize C# and good architecture in Unity. This is the audio service you have just seen, and as you can see, we're using the public camera main camera, which you have just seen in the inspector. Now, this shows up in the inspector, but why? Because we are using the public accessor, and Unity serializes public fields by default. But what if you want to keep your code clean and avoid letting other scripts modify the main camera directly? That's where SerializeField comes in. So let's see what that looks like. We're going to comment that out, and we have the exact same thing. SerializeField, except we have made this private. Now, you get the best of both worlds. It's showing up in the inspector, but it stays private in your code. And pro tip, make your fields private. Honestly, if you are creating new components, make all the fields private until you need something external to access it. And that is when we're talking about private versus public. And only expose what you really need through properties or methods. It's cleaner and it's safer. Another way of writing this is, for example, this is something you can do. Looks great, right? But Unity doesn't show this in the inspector. Why, you ask? The answer is Unity doesn't serialize C# properties. If you've ever seen this before, this is how you define a property. You have getters and setters. Unity only serializes fields. That means even if your property looks public, Unity skips right over it when drawing the inspector or saving the scene. Let's quickly jump over to Unity and see actually what does this look like. Remember we had the camera? Well, we can't see it anymore. So let's jump back. Now, how do we actually see it? Well, you might think, well, it's public, it's a property, why doesn't it show up? It is a property and not a field, and that is just how Unity serializes it. A proper way that you can do this is to serialize the field. We're going to turn public into private. We now have private camera main camera. We can get rid of the getters and setters. Great. Now this can only be accessed internally. However, if you want other systems to now access this, you can go private camera main camera return main camera. So now when you have another class, it can now access your main camera that has been serialized, which means that you are now able to reference it in the inspector. So let's actually go over to the inspector. You can now see we've got main camera. This is our serialized field. We don't have this public camera main camera because it is returning the serialized field. Instead, what we can do is we can bind one of the camera components here, and then now whenever a system reaches for the audio service, it will get this serialized field. So up here, we've got the something test class, and we're going to see how do we actually get the reference to our serialize field. Now, you would probably think, okay, well, let's try to access the main camera, but can we actually get to it? So let's go private camera main camera equals to audio service dot instance, and we're going to look at all the camera references. We only have access to main camera and not the serialize property. So we're keeping it very clean, very disconnected, and we're saying that, hey, if you want to access this private field, go through our public modifier so that we can actually reach it. And this is a very clean way to do it, because when you have everything as public, every class from everywhere can access it. But you want some things to be tied away. You don't want other classes to be reaching out to those fields, because those fields are only internal to those classes. So for those curious about more advanced stuff, Unity's editor tools have something or use something called serialize property. Now, remember when we looked at the property from earlier? Whoops, let's get rid of that. So remember when we looked at the property from earlier, using getters and setters, you can actually serialize them. So I was not telling you the complete truth when I actually said you cannot then see it in the inspector. We can use something called, not quite serialize field. You have to define the field as serializable. So we just need, let's call this main camera. So we clear all those errors, jump over to Unity, and look, we can see the main camera that we have serialized over here, because we have used the serialize field for it. So let's just talk about some quick best practices. Use serialize field private, so this guy. For most variables, use public properties if other scripts need a read-only access. So what does that mean? Is you remove this guy and you've got get. So this guy, your getter, he is essentially public, but we don't have to define that. It's a public getter and private setter. So we can see dot, we can get it, but we cannot actually change the value externally. That's why we're calling getters and setters. Get, we get the object. Setter, we then set or define a value for it. Unity does not serialize properties or static fields. If something not showing up in Unity, check if it's a field, if it's not, especially if it's supported. So for example, vector3 is supported, but say a dictionary, you can't actually put a dictionary and serialize a dictionary. And especially if it's private, if you have a private field and you want it to be available then to say, hey, I want to set this in the inspector, serialize field attribute. So now you know why serialize field is commonly used in Unity and why your properties might not show up. If this helped clear things up, hit like, subscribe for weekly Unity tips. We go from anything from beginner to advanced. I really enjoy talking about architecture. It's very interesting, and if you like it too, stop by again. I try to aim for Fridays, but doesn't always happen. It's sometime in the weekend, depends on real life stuff, but I try to do the best I can to give you guys as good content as possible. If you've got any questions about serialization or want a deeper dive or custom editor tools, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to go over this stuff and probably even expand. There's a lot more to serialization than this. This is the very basics. This is just to get you started, get you on the road running, get you on the track running, and hopefully designing better architecture in Unity. Thanks for watching.